I upgraded the jungle temple. This is what it used to look like, and this is what I transformed it into. Today, we're going to discuss all the features and lore tidbits that I decided to add to this temple, so let's pop straight into it. There are 4 entrances into the jungle temple, 1 on each side. I based the design of this around Aztec temples, and I think that it turned out a lot better than I expected. I also added these palm trees that are seen in my previous video talking about replacing the desert well and replacing it with an oasis. It makes sense to have these palm trees here as it is a warm climate, and it makes sense to have it as a rare thing that spawns naturally with these temples, and it would be a great way to get your hands on a palm tree sapling even if you don't have an oasis near you. Moving on to the features of the temple itself, the stairs to get up are actually not player-sized, so there's actually no way to jump up the stairs to get to the top. You probably noticed that there are these barrels on the sides of the stairs. In those barrels is a bunch of loot, and along with that are splash potions of leaping. Applying it will make you just able to jump up the stairs and reach the top of the temple. I decided to really lean into the fact that the previous jungle temple was mainly used for gathering redstone materials, so all of the loot in this jungle temple is all redstone related. I think it's a great way to have more redstone be accessible to early to mid game instead of just late game. I also added a bunch of features inside the build itself that teach people more about redstone, kind of like in the ancient cities with the buried redstone mechanics under the portal. There's nothing super interesting at the top of the temple, but there is this really cool pattern that I decided to add. I feel like it kind of makes it more of a ritual to enter, and I think it looks really nice. Looking down, you see that there are 3 levels. This first one over here, one below it, and finally the last one. You probably noticed that there's a dispenser down there that's dispensing water out. I feel that this would be a super fun way to get down there. It's almost a little challenge, a little dropper, that you have to land in the water at the exact right time. Like that. The bottom floor is a maze. There are 4 different small mazes. There are 4 hallways that lead to each maze. The maze is on the side, and in front is a bit of loot. I decided to incorporate the same trap that we saw in the previous jungle temple with the dispenser that shoots out an arrow when you do a certain action. But I decided that instead of having it as a tripwire, I have it that when you open the barrel, that's what happens. This is triggered by an observer that's placed behind the barrel, and it's also a great way to get more observers. The maze itself also has traps. This looks like a very innocent room, but you'll realize that this is actually a trap chest, and under it is a dispenser full of lingering potions of harming. In survival mode, you open this chest, discover whatever loot is there, you will be dead. This one is triggered by a pressure plate, and it doesn't really look like the pressure plate triggers anything. But under this carpet over here, there's a dispenser full of splash potions of poison. The second floor is more devoted to lore. I decided to add a bunch of stuff relating to the ancient cities. So, there are these statues, and behind them, I decided it would be cool to have this be the place where they discovered how to make the frame block. I added 2 rows of pistons, this row on the bottom being activated, which is holding this frame block, and the ones on top deactivated, each holding a bone block, and if we mine this block over here, it's a deep slate in the middle, kind of showing that it's bone frames and deep slate in the middle. It's not all about the lore though. There are 4 rooms in these, each in a corner, and they all are very special. We're gonna go through one by one. I decided to take inspiration from the ocean monuments and add a slime room, just like the sponge room in those ocean monuments. There's a bunch of slime blocks and also 2 barrels full of different randomized loot containing slime blocks and slime balls. The second room is very similar, containing a lot of slime blocks, but it also shows the mechanism that allows slime blocks to move with other slime blocks and slidable blocks and immovable blocks. This is a great way to teach people about slime mechanics. It also shows how sticky pistons retract those same slime blocks while a normal piston doesn't. This is probably my favorite room. I took some inspiration from the igloo, where in bottom you'll find 2 jail cells and arrows pointing at each other, showing how you can cure villagers. But for this one, it's showing how to spawn skulk. So we have a skulk catalyst over here and a little bit of skulk blocks over here. In this cage, we could assume it was previously a mob, but it has been long gone as this is an ancient pyramid. On the other side, we have a pile of skulk, and on top we could actually see there is a mob spawner, meaning if you don't get a chance to actually see this, once you kill a mob, you'll be able to tell when the floor turns into skulk. And the last room shows the mechanics of the skulk sensor. By stepping on this pressure plate, you activate the vibration and you trigger this skulk sensor. But you'll realize eventually that walking around on the carpets doesn't trigger it, but when you walk on cobblestone, it does. This is a good way to introduce people to sound occlusion and what triggers sound. There's also a barrel in this room that contains a bunch of really good loot, and it'll also teach people that opening and closing things also triggers the skulk sensor. Now moving up to the last and final layer of this cake, we have the mechanics room. This is filled with a bunch of mechanics and loot that's very vital for early game farms and general information. In this room, we have a simple T flip-flop, which triggers when you press this button, and again, triggers when you press the button again. This is a very useful mechanic for people to know, so having it in a structure and people being able to intuitively learn what a T flip-flop is and how it works, even if they don't know the name of it, would be super useful. You also have a barrel in the corner, which contains target blocks, lightning rods, and hoppers. On the other side, we have an automated dropper, which basically drops out the items automatically without having to push a button or anything. It's a very simple mechanism, but it's very important to know as it's super helpful with automation. The loot table is definitely not as good in this room. It just contains cobblestone and stone buttons. The cobblestone is only meant to put in the dropper so it can show exactly how it works. Moving out here, we have two mechanisms. One is very innocent, just showing how transparent blocks transfer redstone. From the top, it doesn't go all the way down, and from the bottom, it goes all the way up, just showing how the redstone wire transfers. This lectern mechanism is also very interesting. It would be really cool if there was a bunch of lore in these books, but I don't know how Minecraft that would be, so I just decided that each page would be empty, but once you reach the 15th page, you'll hear a piston open, and you'll realize that once you close the book, all of the lamps are turned on. You could eventually figure out is caused by this comparator. Crawling up the vines and going through this hole will show you the actual true mechanism of how this works, both the piston door and the comparator redstone lamp. You'll also find a chest in here, which hopefully would contain better loot than what this is, but I think that honestly, this is some pretty good loot to have in this jungle pyramid. I think having something like this that both implies lore and also shows people the techniques and usage of redstone would be perfect to include into the game. Having the ability to early or mid-game be able to access redstone and all of the techniques used with it would be super useful for new players. Also, aesthetically, I think this build turned out incredible. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to discover more secrets about new and updated structures, then make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you all. I'll see you next time. Bye!